Ever stopped to think about that piece of paper or those numbers on your screen that we call money? It's something we use every single day. We work for it, we stress about it. But what is it really? And how did we end up with this system? Let's dive deep into the fascinating world of money. Way back when, before cash and credit cards, people used something called the barter system. It was simple. You have something I want, and I have something you want, so let's trade. A farmer might trade a sack of potatoes for a new pair of shoes from the shoemaker. Sounds fair, right? But what if the shoemaker didn't need potatoes? What if he wanted wool, but the shepherd didn't want shoes? This is called the double coincidence of wants, and it's a huge problem with bartering. It's inefficient and makes complex trades nearly impossible. Imagine trying to trade your web design skills for a car. You'd have to find a car dealer who just happens to need a new website right now. Good luck with that. To solve this, society started using commodity money. These were items that everyone agreed had value, things that were durable, divisible, and easy to carry. Think things like salt, shells, beads, or even large stones. In ancient Rome, soldiers were sometimes paid in salt, which is where the word salary comes from. Salarium, the Latin word for salt. This was a big step up from bartering because you didn't need that double coincidence of wants anymore. The shoemaker could accept salt for his shoes, knowing he could then use that salt to buy wool from the shepherd. But commodity money had its own issues. Salt could get wet, grain could spoil, and carrying around a ton of cowrie shells wasn't exactly convenient. So, humanity took the next logical step: precious metals like gold and silver. These were perfect. They don't rust or decay, they're rare enough to be valuable, and you can melt them down and stamp them into standardized coins. This made trade even easier and more reliable. You knew a gold coin had a certain value no matter where you went. This was the birth of coinage, and it dominated economies for thousands of years. Now, carrying around bags of heavy gold coins is not only inconvenient, but also risky. Imagine being a merchant traveling long distances with your life savings in a sack. So a new innovation emerged: representative money. People started depositing their gold with a trusted third party like a goldsmith who would issue them a paper receipt. This piece of paper was basically an IOU, a promise that it could be exchanged for the actual gold at any time. People started trading these receipts directly because it was so much easier and safer than trading the physical gold. These receipts were the world's first banknotes. And this brings us to the money we use today, which is mostly fiat money. The word fiat comes from Latin, meaning "let it be done" or "by decree." Fiat money is currency that a government has declared to be legal tender, but it is not backed by a physical commodity like gold. The dollar, the euro, the yen, they all have value simply because the government says they do, and because we all collectively believe and trust that they do. Our entire modern financial system is built on this shared belief. If that trust disappears, the money becomes worthless. So how does this fiat money system actually work? It's largely managed by central banks like the Federal Reserve in the United States. These institutions have two main tools to control the economy. They control the money supply and they set interest rates. When the economy is slow, the central bank might print more money or lower interest rates. Lower rates make it cheaper for people and businesses to borrow money, which encourages spending and investment, hopefully stimulating economic growth. On the flip side, if the economy is growing too fast and prices are rising, what we call inflation, the central bank can do the opposite. It can reduce the money supply and raise interest rates. This makes borrowing more expensive, which slows down spending and helps to cool off the economy, keeping inflation in check. It's a delicate balancing act. Think of the central bank as the driver of a car, using the gas and brake pedals, interest rates, to keep the economy moving at a steady, safe speed. Now, let's talk about where money actually exists. You might think of it as cash in your wallet, But in reality, less than 10% of the money in most developed economies is physical cash and coins. The vast majority of it is digital. It's just numbers in computer systems at banks. When your employer pays you, they don't send a truck full of cash to your house. They just instruct their bank to send a digital message to your bank, decreasing their account balance and increasing yours. When you swipe your credit card, the same thing happens in reverse. It's a complex, interconnected web of digital ledgers. This digital revolution has led to even newer forms of money, like cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin, for example, is a decentralized digital currency. Unlike fiat money, it's not controlled by any single government or bank. Transactions are recorded on a public ledger called the blockchain, maintained by a network of computers around the world. The value of cryptocurrencies is determined purely by supply and demand, and they represent a fascinating, though volatile, experiment in the evolution of money. So, from trading potatoes to tapping our phones, the story of money is the story of human innovation. It's a tool we invented to solve a problem, a tool that allows us to cooperate and trade on a global scale. It's not just paper or metal, it's a system built on trust, a language that everyone understands, and a powerful force that shapes our world in countless ways. Understanding how it works is the first step to mastering your own financial life. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this explanation helpful, please hit that like button. And subscribe for more deep dives into the concepts that shape